Shrimate Bhaktivedanta Swami Nityanamani. Namaste Saraswati Devi Govani Pachayane Nivishesha Shanyavari Pashatari Shatani Panchakapa Trivasa Gripasinivacha Aditanam Bhavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha. Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadada Shri Vasadi Bhaktivinoda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama I think you have to give me a little bit more sound for my old and croaky voice. Okay, so thank you very much for coming, even on a Monday. Usually Mondays are sleepy days. People have their dose of Krishna consciousness on the weekend. Yeah, not sure. Yes. Is it all right like that? Sound? Yes? Okay, good. Yes, so today our topic is Prajalpa. It will destroy this movement. Does everybody know what Prajalpa is? Yes. Unnecessary mundane talk. You can summarize it like that. So actually this was a statement, it is whistling a little bit, maybe you put it to higher. This was a statement by Srila Prabhupada. And the way I understand it is that it's not a prediction for Hare Krishna. It's not a prediction, but it's a warning that if we don't let go of this habit of talking Prajalpa, it may very well have the power to destroy this movement. And some years ago, I was giving this at the ILS, the ISKCON Leadership Sangha in Mayapur. And yeah, it was quite well attended. People were curious what this Prajalpa is all about. So let us remember that the main danger for our movement is actually not coming from outside, but from within. Yeah, I think we can see this. When there's attacks from outside, that usually unites the devotees in fighting against, attacks. But when it comes from within, this is most destructive and dangerous, actually. And we maybe will discover tonight that this is all, the roots are always in Prajalpa. Yeah. And let us begin by a couple of Shastric references. Nectar of Instruction, verse 2. Prajalpa Niyamagraha. So there we have it, that if our devotional service is spoiled, when we become too entangled in talking unnecessarily about mundane subject matters. That's what Rupa Goswami tells us. So of course he says unnecessarily, and we always think it's so necessary what we have to say. But most of the times it's actually unnecessary. And then also we have Nectar of Instruction, verse 1, so that once again gives this instruction about the importance to control the urges of the tongue. And as we know, tongue, belly, genitals are in one line, and it always starts with the tongue. If the tongue is not controlled, then all the other senses are always out of control. And as we all know, the tongue has two functions, eating and talking. And in both functions, we have the tendency to overdo it. who like to overeat. And yeah, it's even Krishna is very tricky. He arranged it in such a way that only after 20 minutes of eating, we actually realize how full we are. So it takes a while. In the beginning, we think, oh, yes, I can eat a bit more. And then 20 minutes after we finished, then we realize, oh my God, I ate too much. So Krishna puts these little things in just to make it a bit more tricky to control the time. So yeah, and this overeating leads to toxins in the rose body. No matter how good and wholesome and healthy the food may be, if we overeat, body can't digest it, and it leads to toxins. And same thing happens also in the subtle body. When we talk all kinds of unnecessary, mundane things, that creates toxins in the subtle body, we can say. So that's why it's good to sometimes fast for a day or so, just to give the growth system a bit of a break. And similarly, we can say is also there with talking. Like when we have our Holy Name retreat in Ekachakra, I usually make one day a Mauna Vrata day, where we don't talk. Of course, in the seminar, everything is going on as usual, but no private talking. And this is quite helpful to actually become more introspective and reflect about our relationship with the Holy Name and so on. And you would not believe how difficult this is for people. One day without talk. People forget, and they talk again. Oh, sorry, I forgot. Or I catch them on the phone. Oh yeah, I'm on the Holy Name retreat, and today we have Mauna Vrata Day, and it's really cool. So difficult for people just to one day refrain from all this talking. And His Holiness Satchidananda Maharaj, he likes to explain how the Holy Name carries an echo called Vani. And after we chant, we may have had that experience when a great saintly personality leads an amazing kirtan. And then afterwards, we can still feel how this echo of the Holy Name is still working on our heart. And we may feel like going for a little walk and chanting a couple of extra rounds or whatever. So this is this echo the Holy Name carries. And this echo is immediately destroyed through what? Prajalpa. That immediately switches on the mundane mind and everything is destroyed. Yes. So, and Srila Prabhupada was actually very strong in this, that he heavily chastised the devotees when they were talking Prajalpa. There's a couple of nice little stories in Koma Prabhu's book about Prabhupada in Australia, where Upendra, he was cooking for Prabhupada the lunch, and Prabhupada's room was next to the kitchen in Melbourne. And the devotees had come back from Mayapur. And of course, in those days, there was no internet and WhatsApp and Facebook and all these things. So, and immediately the big latest news were circulated there in the kitchen. Upendra and the devotees who came back from Mayapur were talking, oh, this person, that person, and have you heard, and this happened, and whatnot. So, and Prabhupada heard it from the kitchen, and he called Upendra in his room, and he heavily chastised him. He actually blasted him. And he was asking, what are you doing? Are you talking with Jalpa? And Upendra said, is talking about other devotees Prajalpa, Srila Prabhupada? And Prabhupada, yes, this devotee, that devotee, life is short. Don't waste your time talking about this person and that person. And when two devotees meet, they should talk about Bhagavad Gita, Srimad Bhagavatam, service to the Lord. And Prabhupada gave him a whole lecture for 10 minutes. And Upendra was all shaken, coming back to the kitchen, telling Prabhupada telling the devotees what happened. And a similar thing happened another time, also with Upendra. Again, Upendra cooking in the kitchen and all this talking going on. And again, Prabhupada called him in his room and chastised him. And that's when Prabhupada said, Prajalpa, it will destroy this movement. It's in Karma Puru's book. And also, there's another funny little story. It was somewhere in America. Devotees had bought a telex machine. You know the story. Telex, most of us don't even know what a telex is. So telex, as far as I know, is the previous technology to fax. So, and I think it was the first technology that where you write something on one end and immediately it comes out at the other end. And the devotees had demonstrated this to Prabhupada. Look, Srila Prabhupada, isn't that amazing? We write something here and immediately it comes out at the other end of the world. So Prabhupada did like to have a look at all the latest technology. After all, we can use it all in Krishna service. So, and then somebody said, Prabhupada, maybe every temple in the world should have this telex machine. And what did Prabhupada say? No. If every temple has a telex machine, you will talk Prajalpa all around the world. That was his answer. So Prabhupada knew. And yeah, I'm sometimes wondering what Prabhupada would say about WhatsApp and Facebook and all these things.
I think the word he actually used was gossip.
Huh?
He used the word gossip.
He used gossip. Yeah. I mean, gossip is only one type of Prajalpa. We will come to that in a minute. And then there was another funny little story. I think it was in Juhu. When Prabhupada moved into his new quarters, he had for the first time his personal phone line. Was that in Juhu? I think so.
Well, in 22nd Avenue.
Anyway, so, and Prabhupada, first time he had his personal phone line. Devotees thought this was a big achievement. Prabhupada has his own phone. And first night, in the middle of the night, phone rings. Somebody from America had forgotten the time difference. Oh, Hare Krishna, Swamiji, how are you? And the next morning, Prabhupada says, take this phone line out of my room. He knew immediately this is more trouble than any good. So I don't think Prabhupada would walk around with a mobile phone in the quarter pocket. I don't think so. Anyway, yeah, so this internet and social media, this is, of course, really magnifying and increasing, like anything, this tendency for talking Prajalpa. Yeah. I think I shared already previously that I live without a phone. I travel the whole world and I don't have a phone. And this is one reason, because I just don't want to get sucked into all of this talk and social media. Of course, we all know it has a little good part to it too, but my goodness, no, it's a time thief. I see how devotees, I just spend so much time on the phone and checking this and that. And, yeah. And often people tell me, I'm usually the last person hearing something. And then when people tell me, I ask, oh God, where did you get that from? Facebook, WhatsApp, Telegram, whatever it's called. So yeah, I'm very glad that this protects me a little bit by not even having a phone. So tonight, I would like to go with you through one chapter of Bhaktivinoda Thakur's book, Prajalpa. There is one chapter called The Six Faults That Destroy Bhakti, which of course relate to Rupa Goswami. And there he has this chapter on Prajalpa, where he gives different categories and versions of Prajalpa. And I find this is quite useful to discuss, just so we become a little more conscious. That's kind of the theme in all my topics. I'm trying to stimulate internal work and introspection and reflection. And usually the first step towards that is always hearing about the topic. Because, yeah, I'm sure we have all heard so many times that Prajalpa is not good for the cultivation of bhakti, and yet we don't realize how much of our everyday talk falls into that category. Yeah, we don't realize. So, and Bhaktivinoda Thakur, he starts by saying that today people become more and more godless. Already then, what to speak of now. And therefore their talk is also godless. And godless talk is basically Prajalpa. Any kind of mundane talk which is not in connection with glorifying Krishna or bringing attention to Krishna. Yes, and interestingly, we will discover that most kinds of Prajalpa have their roots in envy. The other day in the house program, we had the discussion on envy. So there will be a couple of things which we also mentioned there, but most of you were not present there. So, yeah, understanding that most of the kinds of Prajalpa comes from envy, that makes it clear that there are two reasons why Prajalpa is so contaminating. So, of course, the first one is because of its mundane content. But the second one is because it's envious talk. Yeah. And yesterday we were saying about consciousness, how consciousness travels on the sound vibration. So if there is some envious talk going on, then that envy travels on the sound vibration and contaminates and poisons our heart. I mean, we just had Ram Navami, so this whole drama and episode came from the Prajalpa of a maidservant, right? I mean, isn't that amazing? You know, that this whole big story started from the maidservant putting all kinds of poisonous talk in somebody's ears there. Yes. So the first category is useless talk. And Bhaktivinoda Thakur includes novels, any kind of stories that are not connected with Krishna consciousness, and also the newspaper. Of course, newspaper is also already outdated. I don't think anybody here still reads the newspaper because it's all there on internet. But yes, the essence is if we get too absorbed in reading up the world news, this is also Prajalpa actually, especially if we get into discussing and this war here and that president there and this is Prajalpa. And in order to more deeply understand this, there's also a nice story with Srila Prabhupada when he was flying on the plane with a group of his disciples. And in those days, we were getting the newspapers on the plane. Maybe some of you remember. Now they don't do that anymore. So, and Prabhupada's disciples were reading the Time magazine. And Prabhupada asked, let me have a look at this Time magazine, because usually it's known to be a very good and critical magazine. So Prabhupada was flicking through the pages, and then he was giving it back to the devotees and with the words, actually, devotees should not read this. And then he made this very profound statement. He said, it makes this world look so real. That's quite profound. It makes this world look so real. And that's really what it does, right? Because we can say there are two kinds of realities there. There is the flickering, temporary reality, which Prabhupada calls the nonsensical stage performance, right? Which at the moment of death, we already mentioned it the other day in the fourth ego session, at the moment of death, the curtain closes and the nonsensical stage performance is finished. It's all over, finished. So that's the very flickering, temporary, so-called reality, which we think to be reality. But then there is the eternal reality, our relationship with Krishna. That's eternal reality. That's the only thing we're allowed to keep at the moment of death. And we can actually say the whole process of Krishna consciousness is meant to bring about a shift in the perception of what reality is, right? Yeah. When we come to Krishna consciousness, we take the nonsensical stage performance as reality, and then as we become purified, as we reestablish this lost and forgotten relationship with Krishna more and more, then our perception of reality should transform. And we actually live in that eternal reality of my relationship with Krishna. And all right, we have to function in both realities. And we just play the game there in the nonsensical stage performance. But we are more and more deeply established in actual eternal reality. That's what Krishna consciousness is actually meant to bring about. So, and when we read up all these world news, then really it makes this world look so real. That's what Prabhupada said. You know, that establishes us more deeply in this nonsensical stage performance as being the reality. And that's why we should not get so deeply into the world news. Of course, a little bit we may have to know, you know, especially if we are traveling or if we are having some job outside where we have to know a little bit what's going on in the world and yeah, or as preacher and so on, you know. And as leader also, we have to know a little bit. But usually if we just go over the headlines, you actually know enough. You don't even have to read it all and so on. You know? Yes. Then the next type of Prajalpa is arguments, quarrels. Yeah. We are wasting the mind strength by arguing. Family life offers plenty of opportunities for that. Simply arguing about stupid little things. And here we can see already that it usually comes from envy, that we want to somehow establish our superior position, that we know better, and so on. And well, that's envy. And I always give this very simple, practical tip. If somebody goes off their head about something in family life, for example, either husband, wife, parents, children, whatever, good tip is to just not take part. Because arguing by yourself is not much fun, right? If there's nobody there who actually answers and takes part in the whole argument, how long can you go on, right? So it requires a little bit of controlling the tongue and not, participating. But that's just a good way of avoiding arguments, by just letting the person get it off their chest, and then, finished, hopefully. Rather than always, false ego is pushing us to say something, and then the whole argument starts. Yeah, so devotees should avoid taking part in arguments and quarrels, because it creates only negativity and tension and spoiled relationships and so on. Then another category is gossip. Talking about others without reason. Again, of course, we think we have a good reason, but usually we don't. So, and especially when we talk about others' bad qualities, character, what they did. If we talk about their good qualities and their nice service, that's not Prajalpa. There is no limit to it. That's very uplifting. But what is, poisoning is all the negative talk we do about other people. And again, where does it come from? From envy. That we try to establish our superiority by minimizing other people around us. And usually we think that Prajalpa is just gossip. But there's a few more types of Prajalpa there, what Thakur is listing. And of course, some situations are there when we have to talk about others, if we are in some capacity of leadership or mentorship or whatever. But that is then in a well-wishing mood, how to help this person to improve, how to engage this person in a different way so it is inspiring for him and so that is a different thing. And even if we are in such a situation, we should actually only speak about others to devotees who are also in such a leading position. So just the fact that we are in some position of leadership, authority, or care, or whatever, doesn't give us permission to talk just to anybody about other people, right? And we can compare it a little bit with the medical fields. There's also this law of confidentiality, that doctors, nurses, they cannot talk to anybody about some patient's situation. But of course, the doctors and nurses amongst each other, of course, they have to discuss the patient, but not outside. So similar also in Krishna consciousness. And actually, the example is quite befitting, because Prabhupada was always saying, and ISKCON temple, or ISKCON in general, is like a hospital. And we all are here to become cured and so on. Yes. And also, one interesting point is, I was trying to understand why today it is so difficult to keep things confidential, right? When people share something, so often people don't keep things confidential, and they talk about these things to other people, which somebody shared, some personal matters. And this makes it so difficult for people to open their hearts to others, because they're afraid it will go around in the whole community, and usually it does, right? Yeah, I'm sure we all have that experience. This is such an important matter in regards to mentorship or devotee care, that we have to learn to keep things confidential when people open their heart to us. So I was trying to understand, why is this like that people cannot keep things confidential? And then I came up with this thought that this is also connected with a false ego, that we use something that people share with us, we use that to show off. That we say, oh, have you heard? Oh, you don't know, really? You don't know? Well, I know, she told me. And I will be the special person who tells you. But don't tell anybody, it's confidential. And like that, it goes around from person to person. Okay, yeah, it's confidential. Guess what? Have you heard already? You don't know, really? I know, and and then we give it on. It's just we use that confidential, thing that people have shared with us. We use that to show off. Actually, that's what's behind it. It's pretty subtle. But whenever you find yourself in the situation of doing it, it's good to look within and reflect and see, why am I doing this now? Why am I telling all this to others? Yeah, it is because we're trying to show off. Yeah, so this showing off even creeps in there. And that's why it's so difficult for people to keep things confidential. Yes. So then another type of Prajalpa is debating, the debate. And we can see this as a more serious way of arguing. Again, it's like a false ego battle. People just want to win the debate. Usually people are not interested in inquiring and actually understanding the absolute truth or something. But no, people are convinced that their way of seeing things is the right way. And people don't even hear properly, but just trying to get their point across. And very often this also happens over the internet. Maybe we have been in this situation. Somebody says something about ourselves or a certain situation, and so many people read it, and we feel, well, I have to comment on this. Otherwise, people think this is true, right? and then we say something, and what happens? Person twists it around, makes a weapon out of it, boom, shoots it back at us, and then again, what to do? If I don't say anything, then people think this is true, so somehow I have to say something. And this goes on and on and on. There's no end to it. Yeah, any of you have experienced this? And it's quite contaminating. You can really feel all this frustration and anger building up, and you can't even concentrate on your job anymore, and the whole topic goes around in circles. So whenever we find ourselves in such a situation, when some topic goes around in circles in the head, it's a guaranteed sign that the false ego is keeping us in its grip. Yeah, so better not to get involved in this debating. There's no end to it. Better to pull out Hare Krishna, all glories to Srila Prabhupada. Finished. No use to take part in this. It only creates so much negativity and enmity and terrible. And I mean, I don't know what it was like here during the pandemic, but what devotees told me, in some communities, there was so much debating over the different things like vaccination, yes, no, and the community split in half, you know, for vaccination, against vaccination. Both sides thought they have to save the world and bombarded each other there with pro and cons. And was that here like that too?
No.
Are you laughing?
Absolutely.
Terrible. And that's, I mean, again, I don't have a phone. I didn't even know about these things. But people told me on some festivals a little later, when it was getting a little more open, people told me, and I was shocked hearing it all. Even senior devotees, gurus were criticized. Oh, he got vaccinated. Now all the disciples have to also get vaccinated. And was such a demoniac thing. And my goodness gracious, terrible. You know? And when I heard this, I remembered the statement from Prabhupada, it will destroy this movement. I thought, yes, Prabhupada is just so right. You know, this Prajalpa, this debating, and people get so sucked in. My God, so sucked in. And a similar thing, unfortunately, is also a bit with this war in Ukraine between the Russian and the Ukrainian devotees. You don't have any Russian-speaking devotees, do you? Really, they haven't made it to Tucson yet. I meet Ukrainian devotees everywhere in the world. Also in America, Chicago, LA, Miami, New York, quite a few places have bigger communities. Anyway, yes, between Russian and Ukrainian devotees. Oh, this whole discussion on the war. Same thing there. It really spoils relationships. So many offenses are made, and gurus are offended for not saying anything and not making a stand on this war. And terrible bodily concepts. Yeah, so, and I remember once, a couple of years ago, I visited Moldova. You may not even know this country exists. It's a little country next to Ukraine, bordering on Ukraine, so they're pretty close there to the war. And I was talking quite for some time how this war topic should not be discussed. And then as soon as we stopped the session, some bhakta came up to me. And Mataji, what do you think about the war? I said, come on, we just talked about it. It doesn't matter what I think, it doesn't make any difference. I simply hope and pray it will be over soon, but who cares what I think about the war? Yeah, so people are so, overwhelmed and absorbed by these mundane topics, and it can create so much disturbance and conflicts and split in communities. And then the next one, fault finding. Also one kind of Prajalpa, and I think we're all pretty good at that. And we talked a little bit about that in the Envy session, namely that our previous Acharya, Srira Swami, he was making the statement, whether it is true or not, talking about faults of a devotee means to blaspheme him. And this, I feel, is something which we often don't realize. That even if it is true that a person has some defects and faults, just the fact that we feel impelled to talk about it actually comes from envy. We want to put that person down, even if it's true. Wow. Usually we think, well, it's true. Can't I speak the truth? What's wrong with that? Right? Yes. The contaminated intelligence finds all the justifications. Why? It's okay. After all, it's true. So let's take a little example. Let's imagine traveling preacher comes, visits our community, leads a kirtan, and a friend of ours says, oh, that was a nice kirtan, wasn't it? And we say, yeah, it's all right, but the melody, the tune was really strange, and I didn't like this. And so many things we find. So even if it is true that the melody was a little unusual, his instrument playing was not so good and all that, but just the fact that we make the statement, we want to reduce the person's position, and indirectly we say, if I had led the kirtan, I know so many nicer tunes and my singing is better anyway. So there is envy behind it, even if it's true. So we have to be very careful. Sometimes I'm wondering, aren't devotees afraid of committing Vaishnava aparat? Because often there's so much bad talk and criticism and fault finding of nice devotees, and this is so terrible, so terrible. This is, to blaspheme devotees. That's the first offense towards chanting the holy name. And this may very well be one of the main reasons why we don't make as quickly advancement as we could, because we blaspheme the devotees by criticizing and fault finding all the time. Yeah, it's a serious matter. And we are not even afraid of it. It's a real big one. Yes. And even if a person has a fault, by talking about it, we only magnify the fault. Nobody gets any benefit from this. Not the person we talk about, not ourselves who says it, not other people who hear it. It only magnifies negativity. No benefit. It's only poisoning, actually. So good to be clear in this. We see our, sadhus, you never hear them talk bad about anybody. And it's not that they don't see things, it's not that they don't have the eyes to notice, but no, they don't talk about it. You know, yeah. Maybe privately to that person, that's a different thing, but not to others. What for? It's not giving any benefit. Mm. Of course, guru may have to point things out and so on. Yes, but as a rule, we are not in that position. So then another one is speaking falsehoods, fake news, rumors. I mean, out there in the material world, this seems to be the main occupation of some people out there, you know, creating all these fake pictures and videos and this and that just to stir things up and create conflicts and damage some party there or whatever it is. Yeah. And yeah, sometimes this also sneaks into our communities and yeah, we create all kinds of rumors just to put people down and so on. Actually, usually, because I'm only staying a week in each place, this is actually excellent because then you see everybody as a pure saintly personality. You don't stay long enough to hear all the the things underneath the surface and all that. And during pandemic, I was still moving around. I got stuck in Europe. I was actually just coming from India and stopping over in Germany. Only I wanted to stop over for 5 days, and I had a flight to New York. And exactly that's when the borders closed and I couldn't get on the plane. So, but it was good that I got stuck in Europe. In Europe, it was not so bad. I could still move around a little slower pace, and I had to stick to the EU countries, but there's quite a few of them. But I moved around much slower because I always had to make these tests and this and that. So I stayed 3, 4, 5 weeks, and that was already long enough to hear all the Prajalpa and criticism and fault finding, and sometimes even becoming victim myself there. And then I was so glad when I could move around again. That's what I think. God, usually I'm protected of this by not staying so long in one place. But it's a good way to be, that you see everybody as such wonderful devotees. And that's how we should, that's the view we should have, actually. But if we stay longer than 1 week, we can easily lose it. Yes. And another one is to blaspheme devotees, so we mentioned that already. And then the last one is worldly talks. Simply talking about all kinds of faculties of knowledge, getting all carried away in mathematics or physics or whatever it may be. Of course, some faculty of knowledge can very nicely be used in connection with preaching, like archaeology or astrology, biology, this, that. But if we get a kick out of just discussing all kinds of worldly, topics. I mean, once one devotee was asking, so I'm working in IT, and if I'm, still talking to my devotee friends about IT issues, is that Prajalpa? Well, we have to be careful that these topics don't take over our life, right? So after work is finished, we should switch off of these things and get back to real, actual reality, my relationship with Krishna and devotional life. But if these topics take over our whole life, then very easily, there's not much space for Krishna consciousness. Okay, of course, let me also mention this. In certain situations, we have to do a little bit of small talk with people, like our non-devotee parents, for example, or family members, children, non-devotee children, or newcomers. We can't be fanatic in a sense, oh, I can only talk about Bhagavad Gita and Srimad Bhagavatam and Krishna. No, I mean, even Prabhupada, he was sometimes talking about all kinds of things, cars and horses and this and that, right? Yeah. But then he would always bring it back to Krishna conscious topics. So, yeah, it's not so absolute that we can never ever engage in any other talks except straight, pure Krishna consciousness. So in certain situations, especially with new people, we have to connect a bit and see where they're at and talk a little bit. But then we can always somehow bring it back to Krishna conscious topics. Okay. So before I open for questions, I do want to mention one important rule of Vaishnava etiquette, which is, not often followed. And I think people they may not even know this Vaishnava etiquette rule. And if we don't follow this Vaishnava etiquette rule, we again end up in Prajalpa. And the rule is that if there is some dispute, some disagreement on higher levels, either in our community on higher levels or in ISKCON on higher levels, and there's always something going on in ISKCON, as we all know. So if there's topics on higher levels, we are not meant to get involved. We are not even meant to discuss. We are not meant to take sides. We are not meant to pass judgments because it's on higher levels. We don't have the full picture, right? Yes, we don't. And if we pass judgments and get involved and take sides, guaranteed we commit offenses. Guaranteed. And then again, we end up in Prajalpa. Yeah. I completely stay away from these topics. I don't get involved. It's none of my business. It's out of my circle of influence. It's not my service, thank God, to work these things out. And I don't get involved. And that's actually the etiquette. And we can just imagine if we would all follow this etiquette, I think there would be more peace and harmony in this garden. Yeah. But because we don't, that's why it can destroy this movement. Yes, we are getting pretty close in some topics. I'm sure you all know which one I mean, but I'm not going to talk about it. Yes, this is the basic Vaishnava etiquette. Vaishnava etiquette is meant to protect us from committing offenses. Yeah. And this Prajalpa, one effect it has is that it destroys our faith completely. Yeah. It destroys our faith in Prabhupada, in Krishna consciousness, in the holy name. So much so that, yes, people are leaving. If things are decided like that, I'm leaving. My goodness, what is this? Because interestingly, usually these topics, they're not even directly connected with the cultivation of bhakti. Cultivation of bhakti is not dependent on external situations. not dependent. Yeah. So this is a serious thing, you know. We have to follow the Vaishnava etiquette that protects our faith, yeah, and creates harmony. And yeah, that's the poisonous effect of Prajalpa. We lose faith. And especially if it comes to losing faith in Prabhupada, then it becomes serious. That's a serious form of disease, I would say. I'm afraid of that. I want to protect my Bhakti Ladha, my faith in Prabhupada, and I stay away from these things. All right, so let me see if we have any questions. Yes, Prabhu.
Thank you so much. I was wondering if you have a particular strategy for when you're in a situation where conversation turns to Prajalpa. Do you just very subtly, obviously not dramatically, just leave the conversation? Do you try to redirect? What do you recommend? Because there's also a danger of correcting a senior or
exactly.
Or your false ego gets sucked into identifying as Prajalpa.
Yes, you got it right. Very tricky. Well, first of all, it depends on our position towards that person. If it's somebody senior, as you mentioned, again, Vaishnava etiquette, we cannot say, hey, Prabhu, this is Prajalpa. I'm not going to talk about this now, or whatever. So then, yeah, we have to see also what relationship we have on a personal level with that person. But I mean, one thing, for example, if we hear some criticism of a person, if somebody talks bad about somebody, we can humbly maybe try and bring the attention to the good qualities of the person, because that is immediately uplifting the consciousness. Even when we serve as a mediator between two people who have some tense relationship, there's some argument, conflict. A good thing is to start by requesting both sides to say 5 nice qualities about the other person. And sometimes that's already the solution. After that, if people are a little serious and they think, yes, which qualities do I like and appreciate on this person? And if they actually seriously apply themselves to this little exercise, if they are serious, then already, you know, the conflict is solved, it's dissipated. So this makes already a whole change to the consciousness. So we can try that, or if it's somebody, especially when it's somebody senior and we can't really straight out say something, well, we can try and somehow change the conversation. Or if everything fails, say, oh, I think I have to go and do my service. Somehow disappear or something. Yeah. I mean, any senior person will appreciate, oh, yeah, good, you want to serve, yeah, good, do. You can go. But then if it's amongst equals, there we can more easily say something. And towards juniors, of course, also we can say something. But again, even towards equals or juniors, it very much depends on our relationship. The more faith a person has in us, the more easily we can say something. But if the person has no faith in us, then we cannot offer much correction or anything. Yes. Yes.
Yeah,
Huh?
my question Thank you so much. I feel so purified. You mentioned this Prajalpa destroys faith, and I think that that's an experience some devotees have had, you know, and of course, faith in Prabhupada is, so you read Prabhupada's books, you have so much faith in Prabhupada, but what do we do if we find ourselves feeling like I am hurt by some of these things so deeply, I don't want to, you know, go into certain circumstances with devotees. We find, you know, the Prajalpa perhaps, not that we're above it or anything, but we have, you know, we can start finding fault in devotees. We can start saying, oh, this is all Prajalpa, and this is, and we don't want to even be around them, and we find that this is a problem in our own heart rather than, you know, thinking, okay, they're doing Prajalpa, and maybe they are, maybe they're not, but just that energy, we start finding fault in that, and we start, you know, starts becoming a toxin in our mind. How do we deal with that?
Well, in any kind of situation where we choose association, we can see it as being our fault that we are not pure enough to counteract some negative association. And that's actually what it is. Even on book distribution, we have to be strong enough to give our association to them and not take their association, right? So that's, we come across that anywhere. So if, you know, if we find ourselves in situations where we feel, oh, there's so much negativity and Prajalpa going on, well, rather than pointing the finger at them, we should say, well, I am not advanced enough. If I was a pure devotee, then my presence would make a difference. Then I could counteract that mundane association. But because I'm not pure enough, that's why I have to do a bit of social distancing.
That's like a Devaki tomorrow.
Is he saying that?
That's what he says in the very
Yes. Yeah, no, it's important, you know, because otherwise, yeah, we get caught up in pointing the finger at others and fault finding and so on. Anything else? Yes, Boo.
Is there a mic or no? Or just- No, okay.
Not today.
Okay. Could you say something a little about the fine line between, I'll just give an example. If you look at Prabhupada's early Bhakti Gadhas in the 40s, I mean, he is really into the news. He really is up on the news. And half of his articles are all about looking deeply into the news. And even when you hear him on the morning walks and conversations about what's going on, he knows what's going on.
Yeah.
So what's the line between being up on the news and engaging it for you know, your own, to know how to, like you say, live in two worlds, and getting overwhelmed by that? How do you keep it? Might be.
Well, I mean, when Prabhupada was talking about the news and worldly affairs, he was really using them to preach. He was not sitting there for hours reading different newspapers and looking on different websites. What's the BBC saying and the CNN and this and that, you know? So he I don't know exactly how he read the newspaper, but I imagine he would have just flicked and read a few headlines, and then you know enough. You know enough. You don't have to study it all up. So he was simply using these things to preach.
Now, in the case of someone like Sariputta Prabhu, one of the reasons he was so effective as a preacher is because he knew everything the scientists knew, but he also knew the Bhagavat philosophy. So when you heard him preach, he he knew it so expertly. He could present anything. So you're right.
Yeah.
That's just one example. But like if somebody's a writer or a teacher, they might have to know a lot about that to be credible. You know,
Yeah.
to give everything they know and then give them Krishna.
So that's a pretty specialized
Yes, yes.
situation, which the general devotee is not in.
But
Mhm.
everybody has some specialty.
Yeah, all right. But
So
the
that's
specialty should not be to talk Prajalpa. You know, everybody has that specialty to be very expert in talking Prajalpa. Now, I guess it's a question of consciousness. You know, if we are actually absorbed in preaching and we really use these things to preach, that's one thing. But Prajalpa is just to engage in mundane talks there. It's subtle, but yeah, it's a difference of consciousness.
Yeah, even speaking of the phones, the internet, and social media, Steve Jobs, the guy who created iPhones, he never intended that. He intended as a convenience to connect people, not that we would become slaves to it. And I was hearing a fellow talk about who was Steve Jobs' right-hand man who helped him invent the iPhone. And he said, if Steve were alive today, he would be so furious. He'd be aghast. That's how it's being used. So it's so easy for these facilities, as you say, to use us instead of us using it.
Yeah, yeah,
To use by
yeah,
us. I
yeah.
appreciate that. Thank you.
Yeah, they have to be really used with controlled mind and senses.
Mhm.
And that's, yeah, where we fail, where we get sucked in. All right. Yes.
Thank you. I don't know if I should ask this, but I'm going to.
Don't be envious.
Hope I don't mean to be controversial. I've heard that Prabhupada said there wasn't a problem with calling a thief a thief.
There was no problem
Not a
with,
problem with calling a thief a thief,
oh,
calling it as it is. And I heard a senior devotee talking about how we're not pacifists today in a talk. And I was wondering about pacifism destroying the movement, about people not speaking up and abuses of power and matters like that. And how that fits in.
well, there's always channels how we can speak up. I've spoken up about quite a few things in ISKCON, believe me. But I go to the right person who is in charge, you know? That's the thing. When we just talk to people who cannot do anything about it anyway, and you know, it's outside their circle of influence, then it's Prajalpa. But we have all different, you know, personalities and committees where we can bring up some complaints and bring awareness to some things. That is there. So that's also the Vaishnava etiquette. If we see something alarming happening on a higher level, it is our duty to report it to that person's authority. We all have somebody above us. That's our duty. And as I'm saying, I've reported quite a few things. Yeah. But then we have done our job. We have reported it, and then it's in their hands to do something about it. And we don't go on and on and on about it. Then we've done our work, and it's between them and Krishna and whoever is involved, and they will get the reaction if they don't do anything about it. and we just concentrate on our service and our circle of influence. That's the Vaishnava etiquette. Yeah.
You're saying that I get the reaction, I guess that answers the follow-up question I was thinking of. If nothing changes about it, does it fall back up on us? And I guess you're saying they get the reaction like trusting in Krishna. Karma.
Yeah, I mean, the leaders get heavy reactions if they don't do things the way it should be done. And we've seen that many times too in ISKCON, right? Yeah. Yeah. Also, we have to understand, that an international society like ISKCON, this takes time and several generations to get on higher levels. The whole society has to get on higher levels of purification. So it takes time. Yeah. So we can't expect, a perfect ISKCON. Because also we are preaching movement, so we invite everybody in, and everybody brings all kinds of stuff along, So, I mean, when I started in Krishna consciousness, I also had this idea we have to make ISKCON perfect and all this, but I don't think it will ever be. I see it now simply as a stepping stone to get out. Yeah. And there will always be so many things happening. And all right, well, according to our service, our circle of influence, we try our very best to, whatever we can, to encourage and inspire as many devotees as we can reach. But to think that we are creating here the perfect movement, I think that's a little usually, I see it more really as a stepping stone to get out. Yeah. And as I'm saying again, bhakti is not dependent on all these things. Krishna is always there, holy name is always there, Prabhupada is always there, Bhagavatam is always there. We have an opportunity to serve. Yes.
Example of Prahlad Maharaj.
There you go. Yes. Yeah. So we should not get too disturbed about things and caught up what's all happening. And sometimes people also think they have to know everything. I don't have to know everything. I don't want to know everything. Sorry. No. I just like to stick to my service and my circle of influence, and that's enough. I don't have to know everything. No. Isn't it? I don't think I have to know everything. Sometimes it's better if we don't know everything. All right, shall we finish on that note? All right, well, I may not meet you again. Tomorrow I'm going to some community there. I don't even know what it's called. But then day after tomorrow I'm leaving. So just in case there's still somebody who didn't get the books they want to get, here's your last chance. Because sometimes as soon as I'm gone, then I get these emails, or can I have one more 4G book? But then, no, sorry, the order is closed. The message has gone to Mayapur. The box is on the way. Sorry, not this time. So if anybody wants any books, then please tell me now. Yes. And I also want to take the opportunity, just in case I don't see you anymore, to thank you all for your eagerness to associate. I feel very inspired to visit you here. And I'm actually writing a little report about each place I'm visiting to Niranjana Swami. He's asking me about this. And just so that somebody in this world knows what nonsense I'm doing. And I looked up my report from 7 years ago. I still got it on my computer when I came to Tucson, you know. And yeah, I can see actually when I read the report from that time, you know, I remembered more how my visit last time was. And then I realized how much more devotees you have now and how lively it is now in these 7 years. A lot of things have developed here, and this is very inspiring to see. So yeah, I wish you all the very best. Please, if you get a chance, come to Mayapur and join the Holy Name Retreat in Ekachakra. This is such a sweet and deep experience. And I'm not saying that's out of fault ego because it's my retreat. But no, it's so special. We stay there 4 nights, and it's usually over Christmas, this year, 23rd to 27th of December. Especially if you switch off your phone for the whole 4 days. And you have this mood, nothing is more important than the Holy Name. Everything can wait until after the retreat. I promise you, you will enter a different reality. Very powerful. Last time we had Chandramurti Swami coming along again. He came once before and came again. It was very nice and sweet. All right, thank you very much. Srila Prabhupada ki.